Oh, yes, let me welcome Stephanie. So excited. Where I haven't prepared this at all, so let me think on the fly. Stephanie and I have known each other for a little while. I frankly look up to her work. I mentioned this to her, was it yesterday or 2 days ago? I mean, it's just a huge thank you on ridiculously short notice to pop in and chat to us. Just amazing, as always. The reason, just to put it out in the air for everybody, during one of those exercises, I guess 2 days ago, not one, not two, but three different models from Stephanie came up and have been pulled into Miro. So anytime I see a three-part pattern, I often take action on a three-part pattern. So I texted Stephanie and said, hey, do you happen to be free on zero notice? And being such an amazing friend, she said yes. So here is Stephanie to talk about Radical KM and take some questions. And I don't know, I guess be present here with us in conversation for what, 30, 45 minutes? How much
Yeah,
time are you thinking?
I'm good until I have another call I need to be on at 6 o'clock my time. I'm in Berlin, so the top of the hour. And then I'm gonna turn into a pumpkin and disappear.
Okay, all yours. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. So yeah, I love talking about this stuff. I mostly love talking about Radical KM. Um, and I'm gonna get us started. Press the right button. Oh, uh, so who am I? I don't know. It sounds like you probably know who I am, so I don't need to tell you. But I have an undergrad in accounting and an MBA in IT, and I've worked in knowledge management for 20 years, four of it at Hewlett Packard, and 17, oh, I guess that makes 21 years because 17 is an independent consultant. I'm Canadian and moved to Berlin 5 years ago. And most importantly, as you might be able to see behind me, I'm an artist. Um, so it influences everything and it influences Radical KM. And so you guys were talking about the future of KM. Radical KM is the future of KM. I hate to tell you that. Actually, I don't hate to tell you. I love to tell you. And what we're going to do to start off is a little actual guided meditation. If for no other reason, because I've been in back-to-back calls since 10:30 this morning and could use a little breather. And so I think after that, the part of that debate that I heard with you guys, can imagine that maybe you need a little breather too. So I'm going to ask you to get comfortable and take a slow, deep breath and close your eyes. Picture in your mind's eye a small and delicate flower. Floating gently inside your skull. Just behind the bone of your forehead. Notice the flower's color. Its shape. The pattern of its petals. Let the flower drift slowly downward. Gliding gently down your throat into your rib cage. Drifting down and down. Between your lungs. Downward, gently downward. Coming to rest in the lowest place in your abdomen. The place where your breath reaches when you breathe fully and deeply. a quiet touch of color deep in the darkness of your abdomen. Hold the flower there. Hold it. Hold it. Now let it go. Let the flower vanish. But stay focused on the place where it was deep down in the dark center of you. Stay focused on the darkness. Now, when you are ready, and only when you're ready, open your eyes and come back into our virtual room. You have just experienced letting go. Please accept the idea that when you let go of the flower, you also let go of any notions or biases you held about where you thought this session would or should go. Thank you. So take a second here, and you can take a couple of comments before I get into the rest of the session. If you want to share in the chat or unmute yourself, feel free to just take a second and reflect on how that feels, how you're feeling now versus after. Yeah, anything that comes to mind. I'll take a couple of comments and then we'll move on. Anybody want to share? If you don't want to share, that's fine. Sometimes people get freaked out about letting go of the flower, so we talk about that because they want to hold on to the flower. Lots of people have never meditated before or done anything like that before, so we talk a little bit about that. So it's different with every group. And yeah, so does anybody, someone shared in the, Andy's shared in the chat, radical. Oh, you think that's radical? Wait for the rest.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. I could definitely feel my shoulders were like all anxious. We've just gone through a little bit of information. At the same time, I'm taking in now work emails too here and there, but I definitely was able to just clear my mind and then now to focus on what's at hand. So thank you.
Good, thank you. Thanks. Anybody else? No? Okay. I'm going to move on then. Thank you. So I think we all can agree at this point that we're all knowledge workers, right? And what knowledge workers want, according to the studies at least, is to be more engaged and collaborative and creative and innovative and better at executing, implementing, new ideas and taking more risks and, being coached and seen as individuals, all of these things. And so I, trying to keep this in mind all the time, and things have shifted in the 20 years or so that I've been doing certainly knowledge management. They have and they haven't. Some of these things certainly have just gotten stronger, over the 20 years. And so at the beginning of the lockdown and everybody started freaking out about working remotely, I've worked remotely for 20 years. Even the last few years I was at Hewlett Packard, I worked remotely. I was the only one in the Toronto office and on my team. And so when people started to freak out about working at home, I'm like, what's the big deal? And then the question was, how can I help people? Because this is not freaky to me at all. I'm good with the technology. In fact, when I was at HP, I joked when I left that they had to surgically remove the headset from my head because I spent so many hours on teleconferences because the video, the technology for the video just wasn't there at that point. So I quite like doing my Zoom calls and being able to see people. And so the pieces that I put together, as I mentioned, I have this undergrad in accounting, and I've worked in accounting and finance and IT and things. So I have all these pieces that I thought about how do I put them all together in a way that's helpful in knowing what I know about knowledge workers and technology and things. And this is where I put the pieces together and challenged some assumptions and said, what if that's not true? some of these underlying assumptions, things we don't even think about, honestly, you know, what if some of that stuff isn't true? I think COVID has hopefully shown us that the way that we were working and some of our assumptions about work really weren't working and weren't sustainable in the long run and weren't healthy and all kinds of things. So I challenged some assumptions, and this is where radical knowledge management came out of. Some ideas that I've been playing around with for a while. Yeah, some ideas that I've been playing around with and writing about for a while, and have published a chapter a few years ago about, I think I call it creative KM at that point. And I'm going to pause for a second and say, John, can you check on the chat windows and tell me if I need to address anything?
Yep, will do, sure.
Okay, thanks. So I've always approached knowledge management as people, process, and technology. It's not one or the other. It's all of them in a balance. But what I think that misses out on, and what our organizations miss out on, is creativity, is this artistic attitude and artistic practice and learning from artists, which is something I certainly learned from my painting practice that I started in 2011 from a leadership workshop, of all places. And so radical knowledge management is creativity infused in knowledge management, recognizing that knowledge at its core is social and has this aspect of learning and questioning and trial and error, and which is common to having an artistic attitude and practice. I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a minute. But this creativity, which has been educated out of us, which I'm going to talk to a bit more in a second as well, because we've focused on this Tayloristic approach to our organizations and being efficient and effective, and it's all about somehow treating human beings as if we're all machines in some kind of a factory of knowledge work. It may have worked, and I'm not convinced that it did, when we were talking about manufacturing cars and goods, manufactured goods. It definitely doesn't work in the knowledge age. People are not machines. We need space for reflection and asking questions and challenging assumptions and doing things differently and saying, is this really the best way to do things? And that is what I aim to do with radical knowledge management, and bringing that creativity back and bringing that back into our practice and our activities. And why do we need to relearn creativity? Because of what I said about taking this Tayloristic approach to our organizations and being efficient and effective and making everything into a production line. Because, God help us if we should take a break and have to go to the bathroom or ask a question and not have the answer, yesterday. If we don't know, then there's no time to learn, and everybody's in a hurry. And all of a sudden, when COVID hit, there's nowhere to go anymore. And people are like, oh, well, what do I do with this time on my hands? And they don't know what to do with the time. And it's like, well, we needed the time in the first place. How we were living wasn't sustainable and wasn't healthy. And we've got too caught up in the rat race. We need to reintroduce some space for creativity and reflection and thinking and trial and error and these kinds of activities. And really thinking about what we're doing instead of just racing around all the time trying to be faster than the next guy. On psychological tests of creativity, by the time we reach adulthood, only 5% of us are registering in the creative range. And that decreases the farther along in school we get. 5-year-olds, because they've not had too much school and too much indoctrination about, being efficient and effective and being purpose driven and everything has to be in alignment. 90% of them demonstrated the creativity to suggest innovative ways of looking at situations and the ability to dream up new ideas. But that's something we lost. So 17-year-olds were at 10%, and then, like I say, adults were 5%. And that's creativity, though, is something that's critical to helping us cope. And it's what our organizations need at this point. This is a quote from Matisse that I like, because creative people are curious, flexible, and independent. Sounds like something lots of our organizations need at this point. Certainly, it sounds like people that I would want to work with, someone with a tremendous spirit and love of play. Those are going to be good people to work with. We're going to have fun and we're going to accomplish stuff. And I can say that because I just did a workshop the other day with 2 people who are a lot of fun and love play and love creativity. And we had a great time in this workshop and putting it together. So why is this important? Why is creativity important? Why is making this space important? Because it allows us to experiment and come out of our boxes and comfort zones. And probably there's at least 1 or 2 of you going, oh, but I like my comfort zone. Don't make me get out of my box. I like my box. It's nice and comfy in here and it's familiar and I like it. But it's actually really good for us to get out of our comfort zones and try new things and have new experiences and learn and just get out of that comfort zone and see what awaits us in the rest of the world. It gives us a voice. It helps us release and redirect energy. That's one of the things I like about that guided meditation at the top. And if you saw my script, I'm terrible at memorizing, so I have a script that I read in big letters and with a lot of exclamation points after it. It says, go slow. So that I remember to breathe and that I do it as much for myself as for the participants in whatever session, because I get really rattled sometimes, and so it helps me slow down and get a bit more centered rather than just rushing through. So redirecting that energy towards something more useful, it releases stress, it improves our focus, it improves our resiliency, and who couldn't use a bit more resiliency the way things are right now? And it improves our problem solving because it gives us a space to look at things differently and go, oh, maybe this isn't the wisest way to do this, or it's the smartest. Maybe I've done it 16 times this way. Maybe I should do it differently the 17th time because those other 16 times didn't work. And it's time to do something different. So these are some things to do to try being more creative. I'm not going to read it. You can read it. A lot of it is just about paying attention to whatever it is that you're doing right now, and not getting caught up in other things. So meditating and just eating and drinking consciously, playing. Go play with the kids. I used to, when I lived in Toronto and had access to my niece and nephew when they were small, it was great to go and play with them, and have that release. And they looked at the world completely differently than whatever I was doing at the time. So we used to have a lot of fun. So they're 16 and 18 now. They're way past that. They've lost their creativity now. Maybe I need to go back and help them relearn it. So, but tapping into our creativity, we bring our authentic whole self to work, which I keep hearing people saying, oh, we got to bring our whole self. We need to be authentic. How do we do that? By tapping into our creativity, by stopping and leaving it, in the other room or on public transit. If we're actually commuting someplace or in the car, we need to bring that in. And we're not just these analytical, process-oriented people. We're creative and analytical, and we need to do that in balance. And it helps us find opportunities to build skills for leadership, not only within ourselves, which is definitely important because we all need to be leaders. It has nothing to do with place in the hierarchy in our organizations. We all have to show leadership, and we all have to show followership sometimes, and help others to develop leadership skills within themselves. And tapping into our creativity helps us do that. So this is what I was talking about, artistic attitude and practices. Comes from a book called Creative Company. That was written by a couple of folks here in Germany that I got connected to after I moved to Berlin. And this idea that there's artistic attitudes around curiosity and having passion for what you're doing, and confidence and resilience of getting up and going, okay, well, that didn't work, so how am I going to do it differently next time? And take that learning, that continuous learning that Agile talks about and Scrum talks about. And then the practice, the actual implementation, that perceiving, okay, what did I just experience, or what do I know about my situation right now? And reflecting on how might I improve it or change it or make it better. What do I need to do to solve the problem or take the next step? And then play really means trying it out, and performance is actually putting it out there for people to try and see what happens, and iterating. So it these loop back on themselves. And we can transfer these over. So from an artistic or creative space to our workspaces. So when I do my workshops, we paint. Well, assuming I have 2 or 3 days to do the workshop. In my half-a-day workshops, that's not enough time to paint. But in a 2 or 3 day workshop, we paint, and we talk about how, what we're learning from the painting and how this transfers over. And I use it as a metaphor for these activities. And it really opens up and gets people thinking about things differently. And it's interesting to see the energy shifts and the insights that happen by getting them out of their heads and doing something creative. So creative leadership, to transfer it over to a leadership perspective. This comes from a Harvard Business Review article that was written a few years ago. Creative leadership provides 6 times higher revenue growth. It increases employee engagement, and it means just taking more calculated risks and innovating in how to lead and communicate. And it says communicative leaders are ready to question the status quo and not just accept things for how they are, but actually say, is this really the right way to do this? What if this isn't true? What if the situation has changed? Earlier this year, things changed from, Friday to Monday. All of a sudden, you're going in the office every day, and Monday you're not. And so we need to be able to challenge that. And the status quo really is, nobody knows what the status quo right now is. Everybody's working from home, but who knows, 6 months from now or a year from now, what that's going to look like. And so we need to be able to adapt and be flexible and just experiment and see what works for us in this moment for the next few weeks, and then see, has it changed? Do I need to adapt? And tapping into our creativity helps us to do that. Why is this important now? Because of all these things I've mentioned, because of Agile, because of design thinking. They're both trying to bring some form of creativity back into our processes and our activities. We hear people talking about the new work and being authentic and bringing the whole self to work. That's got to include creativity, because that's part of who we are. Sustainability, when you look at, and this is the next slide actually, you look at the behaviors that underlie having a sustainable outlook and making sustainable decisions. So much of it comes out of tapping into our creativity and just adapting to COVID-19 or whatever the next thing is. They're all looking for these behaviors, this sustainable mindset, having a sense of purpose, but also courage and integrity and open-mindedness, and taking a systems approach and relationship building, and recognizing that the relationship is important, and having meaningful dialogue. Keep an eye on my time here because I want to make sure we have time to talk. They all come out of, or so many of them come out of, tapping into our creativity and sitting back and reflecting and trying something new and taking a moment and saying, you know what, I don't have that answer, but give me a week or two and I'll figure it out. And I'll go and do some things that help my brain, figure it out. And I used it myself. I was feeling stuck with my consulting practice through the pandemic and how to adapt it, and started painting. And the answers that came out while I painted, or after I painted, when I sat back and reflected about my process of painting and how I approached that, transferred over to my consulting practice and how I was dealing with my change in environment, and the change in the business environment. And I would have never had those insights if I had just sat here and stared at my spreadsheets and my PowerPoints and my, all my social media and all the rest of it. It came out because I took the time to paint and reflect and go, I don't know what the answer is, but my brain will figure it out, and trust the process. And so far it's been really, really transformative, which is interesting. So it really is time for creativity. The benefits of creativity are exponential. And do we have time? We have time. Do you have a pen and a paper, piece of pen, just a pen and a paper, a pencil and a paper? Doesn't have to be anything fancy. I happen to have, usually I have just a notebook, but I actually have a pad of paper beside me today. Sometimes I use the back of already printed pieces of paper. And this is the very first activity that I did when I started bringing creativity into my knowledge management work. And it's just a little icebreaker. It takes 5 or 6 minutes to do, but it's amazing the insights that people get and just the shift in energy. And so if everybody's got a pen and a paper, I'm going to ask you to put the paper down in front of you. I'm going to shift my laptop a bit. And take your pen in your hand and close your eyes, and I'm going to do it with you. Close your eyes and make a scribble just for a second on your paper. It doesn't scribble however you want to scribble. It doesn't matter. Once you're done, you can open your eyes and look at your piece of paper and rotate it around, and look at it and sort of figure out if there's a way that it feels it should be pointed or oriented. It may not be the way that you had originally scribbled. Maybe it feels better I'm going to say upside down or oriented left or right. So when you figure out how it feels best, add another line or a couple of series of lines to it to add an embellishment. I'll say it that way. Add an embellishment to your scribble, and whatever it feels like. So I'm going to do that. So that's line number 2. And then take it again and again rotate it and see if the orientation needs to change, if there's a different way to look at it. And when you're satisfied that you've got it oriented the right way for you, add a third embellishment. And so that's number 3, and rotate it again around. And when you're finished deciding how you want it oriented, make the 4th embellishment. And we're going to do this again and make a 5th addition to your drawing, your scribble. And one last time, or turn it all the way around. Consider what you want the last thing to be. And then final step, write the first 5 words or thoughts that come to mind when you look at your drawing, your scribble. It can be anything, whatever comes to mind. And that's done. The drawing is done. So we'll take a moment and reflect on how that process was, what your experience was. See some stuff in the chat here. Let's see what's here. Yep. Oops. Anybody want to share? I'll put mine up to the camera too. So they always look different. When I do these in person, we pass the paper among people. So if anyone would like to share, feel free to unmute yourself and share. And if not, that's perfectly fine, of course.
I'll share my thoughts and the result. Hi, Stephanie. I'm Belinda Thomas.
Hi.
I loved it because I love to draw and paint also, but here's my result. My new logo is finally taking shape. Been working on this logo forever.
Yay! All from a crazy scribble drawing exercise. Excellent. Well done.
Mine started to change every time I turned it. At first it was a scribble, and then I thought it was going to be like a recliner chair, and then I turned it and it ended up into a book. So that was, I was using an iPad. Hope that's not cheating, but I ended up with a scribble book.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, they do take on a life of their own for sure.
That was neat.
Good. Thank you. Anybody else want to share? No. Okay. I'm gonna move on. So there. Now, we'll do questions. That's my contact information. If anybody wants to do a screen grab of that, or feel free to find me on LinkedIn. This is a book list of some of the books that I like around that have talk about some of these ideas that I've talked about and put together in Radical KM. The one I like the best maybe is the second one, Artistic Interventions in Organizations, because it actually has a case study published in it about a knowledge management program and how they, in Denmark, and how they did some of this made a big studio and really incorporated these arts-based initiatives into their KM program. So I love this article that was published as part of that collection. And then, yes, just some ways to activate creativity. I've done a couple of online courses I created this summer in the pandemic, and then have a bigger program about applying creativity to business. And of course, radical knowledge management, my favorite thing, my new favorite thing. So there, some questions maybe. I think I have
Belinda
15 minutes before I have to get on my next call.
Sounds good, and thank you. Amazing as always, Stephanie. Belinda was asking if you could put the contact info back up, I guess, for another screenshot.
Sure. Yeah.
I'll also copy and paste it in chat here too, if that's easier.
Yeah. Oh, I can actually put the slides up on Miro, because you gave me access to Miro too.
I did. Yeah.
So I'll put them up later. But yeah, there's my contact information. But yeah, I'll share the slides, and you can get the book list and the other stuff that way. Then, so yeah, I forgot I had access to Miro. So yeah, okay. Questions? Nobody's got questions. I did this a similar kind of presentation 2 weeks ago to a bunch of bankers. They had tons of questions.
So I saw the activity of being more mindful and encouraging more play and that creativity. But then how do I embed that more into knowledge management in terms of thinking about them creating a strategy to support that?
So yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing. So it's about. It doesn't have, I like big artistic interventions and like doing the painting and stuff because there's stuff to learn, but it's about taking even just the icebreakers and making space in meetings to do, whether it's a guided meditation or the scribble drawings, or there's tons of little activities, games and things that you can incorporate that only take 5 or 10 minutes. And it just gets people out of their comfort zones and helps them solve problems differently and create knowledge differently and share and collaborate, and it builds trust because there's a team building aspect to this stuff. So it improves trust and collaboration. And so it's just about being mindful about, okay, where are the little spots that I can do this, make a spot on the agenda, the meetings, creative activity. So, and like I said, there are books and books and books of them. So
great. Thank you.
Stephanie,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Okay, real quick. Hi, Stephanie. This is Gwen. This was fantastic. Thank you so much. Nancy Dixon suggests having at least one artist in every problem-solving group. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were about that.
Yeah, I would agree. In fact, yes, an artist, but I think it's even more valuable if it's somebody, because I know some artists that do that kind of stuff, do some facilitation work with businesses, and their challenge is that they don't understand the business. So in some of the studies in that one book that I mentioned, several of the people actually found that was kind of the conclusion, was that it really needs to be somebody that's got a business background, that understands business and understands art and that process of being artistic and creative. And so when I read it, it's like, oh, wait, that's me. So it's some validation for me, because there's been so many people along the way that have kind of looked at me like I'm crazy, and what am I doing making people paint? I have an MBA in IT and accounting, and what, but I think it's really valuable because I do understand the business. And so I think finding, somebody that does understand the business is a good thing too. So,
Stephanie, it's more a comment and then seek an opinion from you. I used to be the knowledge architect of the Soleil for 7 years, and they forced us like almost regularly to do these creative workshops. And there's a lot of talented, creative people at the Soleil that we've had access to break the left brain, right brain, problem.
Yeah.
And I actually took a vocational test, and I'm more right brain than I am left.
Okay.
Now, people, let's say they go through this course, they come up with a good KM strategy, a good program that they want to pitch, but they got to get the buy-in of IT. And IT, I look at it as left brain methods, processes, and very hard to move and shift, and they own the money most of the time. How do you recommend using a creative approach to build an awareness campaign or whatever from a creative, mindset that you're proposing to influence and get their KM program? Because they can build a program, they can have it all architectured, but then you need to get, your rubber has to hit the road. And you said you have a master's in science, information science, and MBAs and accountants, so these difficulties.
Yeah, and it's about, like with all KM programs, it's about starting small and building support, right? And so you start small with the activities like we just did, the scribble drawings, and watch that. And people will push back, absolutely. And I've done workshops with accountants and IT people that they're kind of looking at me like, why are you making me do this? And yet, if I can get them to actually do it and convince them that, it's only 5 minutes, it won't hurt, they actually are pleasantly surprised about the outcome and about the shift in energy and about how that feels. And a lot of the IT people, at least a lot of the ones I meet here in Berlin, actually have some kind of artistic practice or creative practice, whether they're musicians or artists or writers or some other creative outlet. So that's something that they don't necessarily share in their work life. But when I give them the opportunity in a workshop, it's like, oh, I didn't know I could do this at work. And I talk about the benefits of taking a few minutes. A lot of the startups and things here and the tech companies here have they'll have foosball tables and areas for sports and different things. And so I'm like, why don't we have a spot for art or for music? Because that's just another outlet, on my list of things to do to be creative. Certainly sports and exercise was one of those things. So art and creativity and drawing and music, and there should be some space for that too. And there's benefits to doing that. So introduce the ideas. There are studies and stuff. This idea of bringing more creativity in has been around. I think the earliest paper I found when I was researching the article that I wrote this summer went back to 2000 or 2001. So there's actually a reasonable body of literature that's been written about the benefits of this. And there's the Harvard Business Review article that I quoted about the benefits of creative leadership. So there are some numbers around. So if it's somebody that really gets stuck on the numbers, there's some numbers around that may help convince them. But the biggest thing to convince them is just to put them in the activity and have them do it. So that's the biggest seller.
Thank
in
you.
my experience.
I might selfishly jump in too if nobody else does. Stephanie, I've got two, so see if either one jumps out. So you saw the 3 models on Miro that got pulled in, so
yeah.
Thank you again for those. Maybe it's just my own strange curiosity. I wonder, when you see those 3 models, get referenced and pull out, like, what comes up? Those are, you did those a while ago. What comes up for you now when you see those? Do you still like them? Do you not like them? Would you update them? That's one question. And then another one is, we've watched knowledge management go from individual performance to team performance to organizational performance to networked international performance. What could you do with creativity in mass? You had 7 billion people working on a pandemic together. What does that workshop, what does that art look like?
Amazing, the solutions that could come out of that. To answer your first question, though, when I see the models and things, I'm glad that people have come across it and that it's impacted or helped them in some way. I like that. It's not that they're wrong. I don't hate them or want to disown them or anything. I think they're right. And I think in my slide, I still got my Venn diagram, the people, process, and technology with KM in the middle. I still believe that, and I still think that that's the right approach. It just didn't go far enough because it focuses so much on leaving creativity and not making space for knowledge creation and discovery and innovation out. It's so focused on the being efficient and effective that it's just not enough. It's not that it's wrong, it's just incomplete is how I look at a lot of it now, is it's incomplete. And so, yeah. So, but yeah, and the solution, yeah, that would be amazing if we got more creative and reflective and really thought about what a solution to the pandemic or the next thing would be. So, yeah. Is that good?
Love it. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I guess we could probably get you 5 minutes before your next meeting, or
excellent. I could get some more water. Any
burning question? One last minute or 30 seconds? Or do we just want to clap and say thank you? Maybe that's what we're at.
Thank you very much. That was great.
It's a big thank you for me. Rachel's clapping too, and so amazing. Thanks again on such short notice, and
yeah. You're welcome. And I'll put the slides up on Miro.
Thank you.